안녕하세요. 안녕하세요. 저는 크립토서울 강현정 대표입니다. 반갑습니다. 오늘은 사실 저한테는 진짜 의미 깊은 미더업인데요. 사실 그 코스모스라는 팀을 제가 작년부터 좀 많이 팔로우를 했었는데, 드디어 코스모스 팀을 이제 크립토서울 미더업에 좀 호스팅하게 돼서 너무 감사한 마음입니다. 크립토서울은 한국 대표는 아니고 커뮤니티 빌딩하는 팀이고요. 다양한 해외 프로젝트들을 국내에 소개하는 역할을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 개발자 또는 학생들 또는 다양한 투자자분들도 환영이고요. 대환영이고요. 대신 정말 진정한 관심이 있는 그런 분들을 많이 대상으로 하고 있어요. 그래서 저희는 지속적인 관심을 유도하기 위해서 다양한 좋은 퀄리티의 프로젝트를 많이 소개하는 편입니다. 그래서 많은 관심 부탁드리고요. 주로 한 달에 한 번 꼭 미드업 하니까 많이 참석해 주세요. 그리고 다음 달에는 저희가 컨퍼런스도 열거든요. 좀 소개를 좀 드리고 싶은데 저희가 비들서울 2018, 비들서울 2018 그런 컨퍼런스를 여는데 코스모스 팀도 참여하고요. 그리고 루나민트도 참여하고 그래서 많이 정말 좋은 프로젝트 많이 오거든요. 그래서 나중에 궁금하신 분들은 저희 웹사이트 알려드릴 테니까 조금 많이 참석해 주시고 관심 가져주시기 바랍니다. 일단은 제 소개는 다 한 것 같고요. 이제 정말 제가 꼭 모셔오고 싶었던 코스모스 팀을 좀 소개해 드릴게요. 코스모스 팀은 인터넷 오브 블록체인 그런 이제 정말 슬로건을 들고 나온 정말 혁신적인 팀입니다. 그래서 저희는 정말 발표를 너무 기다렸었고요. 그래서 저희 크리스틴과 이제 정말 메인 팀에서 개발자 주윤님도 오시고 정말 영광입니다. 일단 크리스틴님이 Rearchitecting the Blockchain Ecosystem, 그래서 재설계, 블록체인 생태계를 재설계하는 방법에 대해서 좀 소개를 해드릴 계획입니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Hi, I'm Christine. I go by the moniker Tango and Chain, and I'm the head of communications at Tendermint. I apologize, I don't know how to speak Korean, so all of this will be in English, but I will try to go slowly. Okay, so I'm going to start by adding a quote of Andreas Antonopoulos. If you guys don't know who he is the sort of a visionary. He's the Bitcoin Buddha of Bitcoin. And he kind of spreads the gospel of the decentralization ethos. And it was him that brought me into Bitcoin, which led me down the rabbit hole and I surfaced out in Cosmos. And so some of the values and the principles in Bitcoin are very similar to the values and principles of the Cosmos network in terms of decentralizing as much as we can. So I'm going to quote him. He adds a perception about changing our minds when we think about being maximalistic towards any single project in terms of tribalism. So he says, the idea of having only one world currency is a bit of a throwback to our current currency system. We've grown up in a system where currency is backed by nation states and currency is represented by flags. The world is a big chessboard, and currencies are the pawns that fight this big geopolitical battle. And the dollar wins if the ruble fails, dollar wins if the Korean won fails. And it's in that environment, it's a zero-sum game. So it's a winner-takes-all game, and nobody wins but one person. So what if instead we think of money in a different way? If money was simply a form of language, what if we understood that money was a way for us to communicate value to each other? And as a language, there will never be one that wins. There will always be a variety of languages. And the bottom line is, if you speak 3 or 4 languages, you are stronger and better off than if you just spoke one language. So in fact, having variety is what gives you greater value. It's what gives the ecosystem more value. And building on that, that's kind of how we think about blockchains. So the more blockchains there are that explore the entire space of trade-offs, and the idea is that the better we are. So Cosmos envisions a world with thousands of chains. So where there are currently thousands of tokens right now, there's thousands of ERC20s. Instead, Cosmos allows you to build blockchains. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll start seeing a world with thousands of blockchains running their own application-specific state machines. And we'll talk a little bit about the technology that we have going for you. So before Cosmos, you didn't have a lot of choices. You had the Bitcoin Codebase, and early decentralized applications like Zcash or Litecoin were just forks of the Bitcoin Codebase. And you could see that the Codebase is just one monolithic stack. And if you wanted to add additional functionality, you had very limited space to explore that, except you had really high upstream maintenance costs for your developers. And so it was not very developer friendly, and there's high upstream costs. So Bitcoin maximalists call every innovation that isn't building on top of Bitcoin a scam. And so this mindset sort of brings us back to the mindset of the winner takes all, or a zero-sum mindset. So with the next generation of developer tools, we have Ethereum. And Ethereum implemented the concept of a smart contract, which was first introduced by Nick Szabo. And the idea that Gavin and Vitalik had for Ethereum was that a bunch of application developers would want to build decentralized apps and launch their own tokens, and then we're going to host a VM for these dApps to run on. And so that's the Ethereum public blockchain. And so we've seen the Cambrian explosion of dApps last year with under peak hype, and so they indeed validated that that idea. However, the execution with all dApps running on a single general purpose blockchain is sort of flawed in that we've seen the difficulty with Ethereum struggling to scale. And so in 2014, Ethan Buckman and Jay Kwan, the co-creators of Tendermint, they were thinking of solutions to address the blockchain scalability problem. And that's what brought about the third generation of blockchain application development tools. So Cosmos introduces an SDK for blockchain application developers, and we like to call this the third generation of blockchain app developer tools. This allows you to build your own bespoke blockchains, run as their own application-specific blockchains, and then should you want to bootstrap the security of your network, you could have shared security. So the bet with this is that more developers would want more control over their dApps, use their own native tokens to pay gas fees, have their users use their tokens to vote on governance, for example, and you could do this with the Cosmos SDK. And this value proposition addresses a very different utility than that of the hosted VM. So I get asked this question a lot when I introduce the Cosmos SDK. It's that, are we trying to replace Ethereum? And that's not actually the goal. This is an alternative framework, not really a competing one, because we address different value propositions. You know, if you want to easily spin up a token and you want the backing of the security of the Ethereum network, then you could use a smart contract. But if you want to, you know, have a complex decentralized app, let's say you want like a video streaming decentralized app or something, you could use the SDK to do that, and you could use what we call validators to validate your blockchain, who also validate the Cosmos Hub. So that's what we call shared security. But understandably, when we present the Cosmos SDK, the naturally occurring thought is that we're trying to replace Ethereum, or trying to be the winning chain, and that mindset is kind of driven by the one chain to rule them all mindset, and that's not the goal of Cosmos. So the goal of Cosmos is to provide an open protocol through which value is communicated. So what happened in the 80s and 90s during the advent of the internet, people were realizing that when you could get computers to talk to one another, this incredible flow of information could start happening. And the internet led to opening the floodgates of free and open information, whereas information used to be privileged, and cryptography was considered a weapon of war. So with the advent of cryptocurrency, we have a way in which value could be transferred freely and rather seamlessly without much friction. So what if we enable people to build their own tokens of value? What if we give them the tools to build their own blockchain? What if we give them the building blocks to building a bidirectional highway in which communication could be achieved through siloed blockchains? So that's the big what if that Cosmos technology is trying to address. So we've built a protocol, a communication highway through which all chains can use to speak to one another. The communication highway is called IBC for inter-blockchain communication. And inter-blockchain communication is the protocol that allows the internet of blockchains to happen. So it enables the transfer of tokens, data, and eventually you could make smart contract calls across IBC. And IBC is just a module in the Cosmos SDK, and you could just plug that into your application logic if you wanted interoperability to happen. So that's what we mean by interoperability. It's not interoperability between smart contracts on a single chain, but it's interoperability dynamically across blockchain. So you could think of it as equivalent to the TCP/IP of the Internet Protocol, but IBC would be the protocol for blockchain communication. So if we continue on this model of one chain to rule them all, one Bitcoin or one Ethereum chain to rule them all, then we're reverting back to the old mindset, delivering a new set of currency controllers and replacing the old set of central bankers with the core developers and the miners of a single decentralized network without fundamentally changing the architecture. So if you look at how Cosmos re-architects the whole model, it's that you get maximal decentralization in that if you, an application developer, wanted to, you could have your own blockchain. And your own blockchain could talk to another blockchain. And that's how we decentralize the model. It's not going to be one blockchain in which everything is run on top of. And then you'd have to use Ether or something to pay gas fees. You could use your own token. So if you look closely at how the Cosmos stack is built, everything is basically abstracted away from one another. So the Cosmos SDK is a blockchain framework. You could think of it as Tetris pieces or puzzle pieces that you kind of plug together in a very seamless manner. So in this way, you could start to have sort of interconnected blockchains. So you see these modules, they're all sandboxed. And so that's the security model of the SDK. We call it object capabilities or least authority access. Basically, this design paradigm makes it less easy for something like the DAO to happen if you were to have built your application with the SDK. It's much more secured and firewalled in that manner. So the stack is abstracted from one another, and you could. It's so far abstracted such that you could even replace the middle green thing right there. That's Tendermint. The Tendermint is a consensus protocol and a gossip network in a box, basically. Those are the low-level things that makes building blockchains from scratch very difficult, that very few people in the world can do. But so we've built that in a box for you, basically, and you could plug that in. But if you wanted custom consensus code, you don't need to use Tendermint. You could use your own, consensus and networking protocol. We've abstracted it away from the application layer. So. Even if you don't want to interoperate with the rest of the Cosmos network, you don't have to. So you don't have to use IBC, but if you wanted to, you can easily just plug it in. The choice is yours. So what it ultimately boils down to is choice. This technology gives people choice. So the SDK is a general purpose framework that offers an alternative, not competing solution to Solidity smart contracts. Smart contracts have their own benefits that decentralized application developers don't desire, that the SDK doesn't provide, and conversely, the SDK provides benefits that Solidity smart contracts don't provide. So, so we're enriching the ecosystem of tools. So maybe you want to build a dynamic decentralized application like the video streaming application. It's going to require a lot of heavy computational load, so it's infeasible for you to deploy a smart contract in which you have to compete with other smart contracts for computation. So in this case, you might want to have your own blockchain running your specific application on its own. That way your users can use your token to pay the fees, and they don't have to compete with users of other smart contracts to use your application. And if you wanted to bootstrap the security of your network, you can adopt shared security with the Cosmos Hub. So that's kind of, if you're familiar with merge mining, that's sort of what it is, similar to. And shared security could be plugged in as a module later. But you don't see, this is the core set of Cosmos SDK modules. You don't see that here, but it's down our future roadmap. So if you want to build a payment application or a decentralized app, alternatively, in a highly scalable way, you could use Plasma. How many people know Plasma? Yay! Several people are aware of Plasma. So Plasma is just like a framework from the white paper. And there is one group of blockchain at Berkeley students who are implementing a Plasma sidechain. But except they're the only ones in the ecosystem making it general purpose. So they're creating a general purpose smart contract on the Ethereum chain initially, and then they have built a Plasma child chain. I hope it's not getting too jargony. They're building a Plasma child chain using the Cosmos SDK, basically. And in the future, they're making this construct generalizable so that anybody who wants to build a payment application or a DEX could use Fourth State's Plasma SDK. And that's essentially, the Plasma SDK is essentially something we call Peggy. I think June, our core developer, later will talk a little bit about Peggy. He might. And Plasma. You just plug in Peggy, Plasma, with the SDK, you've got yourself a Plasma chain that connects to any root chain that essentially speaks the smart contract language. So by providing the framework for innovation to happen and alternative tool set, you could bring your decentralized app to the end user. And you have the choice to use the open protocols that Cosmos provides. And with that, you could start to see widespread adoption of decentralized apps, maybe, because you could scale your apps to consumer scale of like 10 to 20,000 users, maybe. We have, there is one project using the SDK. They're called Playlist, and they have above 20,000 users, and they're using Tendermint right now. So building a highly useful, scalable dApp is possible now, and that's what we introduced with the SDK and the modules with this framework. So with that, I think that we could bring decentralize all the things slogan to become a reality. And the mindset here, it's not, you know, Cosmos is trying to be the winning chain. We don't think that there's going to be one chain to rule them all. We think that there's going to be thousands of blockchains now that we've lowered the barrier to entry for building your own blockchain, pretty much not from scratch, from in a box, a blockchain in a box. So I think that as long as any blockchain project is able to maintain its fundamental principles, helps lead mankind to societal change, and helps people to free themselves effectively, that to me indicates that we've succeeded in bringing the technology to the people. So your tool set for societal change is here. It's ready for you to build on. It's stable, it's deployed, github.com/cosmos/cosmos-SDK. And we leave it up to your creative genius to create the change that you want to see in the world. So, what will you build? And I'm Chango and Chain. Thank you. You can find me on Twitter. And we've got June coming up next. He's going to give you a technical workshop about the modules and how each of the modules can speak to each other, how to build a decentralized app on the SDK, and he'll give you a demo. And that's June.